Hey, we're here today with both Figment and some of the team from Near to talk about a new product from Figment called Figment Learn, and also some stuff about what's happening with Near, specifically the Near pathway about how developers can get started and learn about how to deploy smart contracts and use a Near blockchain. So really quickly, we'll introduce ourselves. From Figment, we have both Andy and Yannick. We focus on product at Figment, both on two products, Data Hub and Learn. And we can go in more in detail on that in a little bit. Yannick will give a presentation. And then Sheriff and Josh, you want to introduce yourselves quickly from the Near team?
Yeah, sure, happy to. My name's Sharif. I work on education at Near. I'm a teacher. I love watching people learn, helping them learn faster. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great.
Yeah, and I'm Josh. I'm a software developer at Near. I work on the DevX team or the developer experience team. And I've been starting to work a little bit more with Sharif on the educational side. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. Glad you guys are doing this. This is awesome.
Great. Thanks, Sharif, and thanks, Josh. Okay, Yannick, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about sort of the new announcement for today. Do you want to talk about Figment Learn?
Sure. So I'll touch upon Data Hub quickly because that's how we got to Figment Learn and better understanding the space, and obviously present this new project and how we're going to be working with Near and going forward. So hey everyone, I'm a product manager at Figment. I focus on our developer tools. So let me run you through how we got to this point. 1 second. Too many video sources. Actually, I can't share my screen. Can't seem to be able to share my screen. Should I just skip it?
No. Josh, is it okay if you just drop out for a little bit and I'll invite you back up? We can have four video streams going, and screen share is one of them. Yeah, so
no problem.
I'll ping in. I'll ping in a little bit.
It was a pleasure.
Take care. It's been great.
So we'll get there. Well, okay, excellent. Let me jump in. Is this working? Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
Excellent. So you might know Figment initially as a validator on many Web3 protocols. But over the last year, we've decided to venture into the developer tooling and the developer infrastructure. So our first product for devs was Data Hub. So infrastructure as a service where we run full nodes for devs so that you don't have to worry about managing infrastructure. And we build our own APIs and indexers to complement the available RPC and kind of give you superpowers instead of limiting you to what the blockchain expected from you. And in the process, we kind of figured that, yes, infrastructure was a huge problem, but the second big problem was documentation. So as soon as you step outside of Ethereum, you have very fragmented documentation, whether you're on Swagger UI, you're on Postman, you're on Gitbook. You'll never find the same format for the APIs you're looking at. You'll find it very hard to compare and discover networks and protocols because the information provided to you is always different from one protocol to another. And even if you figure out which network is right for you and decide to commit to one, there's very little tutorials and advanced documentation that allow you to push deeper into that protocol and build stuff that might be more advanced and that is actually unlocking real value. So that's why we built Learn. So Learn is basically three things. Well, first, it's the Web3 knowledge base. So what we've done is we've aggregated and standardized the documentation of all the protocols we support inside Data Hub so that whether you're on Near, on Mina, on Oasis, you'll find the API documentation in the exact same format, and you'll have the exact same information related to what you can build on that network on on its specs, such as speed and transaction fees, so that you can make a quick decision on which one is right for you. And the great thing is that you can test those protocols right away for free with DataHub. And then what we've done is partner with foundations, such as Near to start with, to incentivize learning and sharing. So the first one will come in the form of pathways. So basically, devs will be able to complete 5 tutorials that take them from connecting to a node all the way to writing and deploying their first smart contract on a given network, and then earning $100 in the protocol token. So great way to get onboarded to a network and to learn about it and get paid in the process. And again, everything can be done for free through DataHub. And when you feel you're more advanced in a given protocol and you feel like it's time to actually share your knowledge, you can contribute tutorials and earn up to $500 in tokens in the process. So basically, you'll be able to contact us, apply to become a contributor, and then discuss tutorial topics that might be a great addition to the ecosystem. And then we'll work with you to get to a final result that is satisfactory for everyone. So the first iteration of this will be with Near. Thanks to the Near team for trusting us with this. Some of you might have already noticed, but the Near pathway went live yesterday. So basically, you can sign up through DataHub and get a free Near account. In your dashboard, you'll find all the tutorials you need to complete as part of that pathway. You'll be able to verify that you've done them properly. And once you've completed them, you can submit a form in order to earn up to $100 in Near tokens that we'll send you in up to 7 days. We'll make sure to be as fast as possible, especially in the early days. And if you're already advanced in Near, or if you feel that after doing those tutorials, you are ready to push the documentation available on Near a bit further, please reach out. We are looking for more contributors today to expand the knowledge base and the amount of tutorials we can offer. So I hope this was clear. Please ask questions in the Crowdcast. We'll be happy to reply as soon as possible. And now Andy will be able to run us through a quick demo of that flow.
Great. So I will flip my screen on here, and I'll show you what this actually looks like. Okay. So as Yannick mentioned, what we're trying to do with Learn is first curate what's out there, sort of the best of what's currently out there, and put it into a common place. And so you'll see as you scroll to the left side, we've got a few networks that we've added. And so this is really just about documentation, trying to have sort of a canonical place where people can find stuff. But as you click in, I'll click into Near here. You'll see there's a lot more you can do. We have sort of the basics you'd expect in terms of the RPCs and REST APIs. There's a little bit of overview 101, but also there is this concept of a Near pathway, which a pathway is sort of like a little course, a little curriculum of tutorials, things you can be guided through. And so what I want to show you now is, as a developer, what that looks like. We have a way for you through DataHub to actually go through these tutorials in a structured manner. So here, this is my personal Near account. Yes, that is my real API key, but we have a nice rotate function. So after this call, I'll change my API key. This is just a demo account anyways. But here you can see the current available services for me on Near. I could use the mainnet archive. I could use a testnet archive. I could use a testnet full node. All these are available to you. So both mainnet and testnet and archive and full nodes are ready to go. There's a couple ways you can connect. You could either do it using an authorization header. You could, right here, if you just have a URL, you can sort of put /API key in there. And you could use this like you would use any Near full node. We have You'll see some additional services going here, maybe some things that aren't available by default from Near, such as a advanced transaction search service, things like that. We'll keep adding new functionality. But what I want to focus on today is this section down here, which is called tutorials. And so here are the first 5 tutorials that you can do to get started as a Near developer. And so first, number 1, let's connect to a Near node. So I'll just click start, and it will pop me over to that tutorial on this website, learn.figment.io. So as I go through it, there is all the setup I need to create my environment with NPM. We have some certain variables here. You can set up your name and your URL, things like that. Step by step, here's a script you can use. And we also, on all our tutorials, we provide the full script, and this is available on GitHub as well. So if you want to fork it or anything, all this is available on GitHub. And then we go line by line. What does this mean? How does this work? And so the goal here is not just copy paste, see what happens. Actually try to walk through all these things. And so when you're ready, when you've sort of got the goal of this tutorial, you can go back and you can click verify. So I've not done anything yet. So hopefully when I click verify here, it'll throw an error. Oops, you didn't actually do anything yet. So I'm going to jump over to my terminal real quick and just, I have this script ready. I worked on it earlier today. And so I've just run it. So I'm going to click verify again. And hopefully this time it will show that what I've worked. Great. Tutorial 1 has been successfully verified. So this is a way for you to get feedback as you go through the process of this pathway, going through these tutorials. Like, hey, it's sort of a way to check your work. Yeah, you actually did it correctly. And we're verifying that as you go. So you can see all the steps here. It's pretty fun to go through this. I felt after I did it that I was a mini Near developer. So this was a really good thing to go through. So that's sort of the quick demo around 2 websites I just went through. 1 is this website, Figment Learn, which is the sort of Web3 knowledge base. And 2, I wanted to show how that was integrated with this other product, Data Hub, which is a way to get access to Near, sort of Near nodes as a service, and go through these tutorials step by step. Great. All right. Okay, so that is the end of our little presentation. I'm going to invite Josh back. He's going to not going to be banished anymore. We'll bring him back in, and then we're kind of want to go through some questions with the Near team, with both Sharif and Josh. As I'm adding him, Yannick, do you want to sort of find the first one that's been on your mind? Or maybe Sharif, we should, if you anything you want to say before we jump in, is there anything you want to say to some of the developers in the audience or any folks building on Near?
Yeah, I appreciate that. First of all, I just want to say congratulations. This is tremendous. The amount of clarity and sort of the crisp feel for this single shared approach that you've created, I think, is a fantastic way for developers to get started. Like one of the biggest problems of learning anything is the 0 to 10 miles an hour. Like, how do I get rolling so that I have a sense of what I'm even looking at, right? How do I orient myself? Because after that, Google is your friend, Stack Overflow is your friend. Mm-hmm. You can dive into the community and you're sort of speaking a shared language. But until then, you don't even understand the answers that people are giving you. So from that perspective, I think this is fantastic. And I just wanted to say congrats on this effort. I think it's going to be fundamental for teaching so many people about this technology and really just kind of helping them orient to the landscape. It's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for that. Sure. And what I should say is we sort of we envision sort of 2 steps here. So step 1 is for the folks who currently maybe already consider themselves to be maybe a Web3 developer. Maybe they know a thing or 2 about blockchain, but they don't know anything about Near. This is a way for them to sort of also sort of pattern match. Oh, this means this in this other network. Here's how I might do it in Near. And so I imagine that we'll be talking to people who are sort of already speaking the language. At least they're in the space. That's phase 1. And then I think the real opportunity, and I think the thing that maybe I've seen the team from Near talk about as well, is how do we broaden the space? How do we get people who've never worked on blockchain before? How do we sort of bring them into this world? And so that's sort of how we're thinking about it in those 2 steps.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, we want to break out of the echo chamber, invite people in that are curious or working on adjacent technologies, and enable them to kind of get started as quickly as they possibly can. So it's fantastic.
All right, great. Well, Josh, I'm glad to see you back as well.
We missed you.
Maybe, maybe An open-ended question for the folks who maybe aren't as familiar with Near is, what is it, and how should, since we're talking to developers today, how should developers think about Near, and when should they think about using it?
I could take a stab at that, and then Josh,
Yeah.
maybe you want to give your perspective. So the way I've been describing it to people coming from an Ethereum background is it's essentially the same thing, except accounts are easier, transactions are cheaper, and there's a lot more flexibility that you get with key management and contract versioning and things like that. So it's a compelling story for people coming from the Ethereum space. I wouldn't call it competitive, but it's it takes sort of a different tack on a few of the key ideas, and of course you can't beat the presence and power of the Ethereum community, but from a kind of an experimental view, from a new frontier view, breaking new ground, I think it's an interesting position there. For people who are coming from Web 2, web developers, the question is like, why blockchain and why care? I mean, the reality is that any transaction is going to be slower and more expensive than your sort of cheapest virtual server you can get from DigitalOcean or whatever. So the reason that you're spending more time and money on this technology in terms of making things happen is because you are operating on a kind of a foundation of truth that isn't available anywhere else. It's unassailable by a company or a state entity. And when you write something, when you write some piece of data, it is considered ground truth by the network. It's now publicly available. Anybody can assert it. It's mathematically defensible, and so this kind of is a big deal, because on top of that truth, you can layer real value, like money, for example, and that's why money is a primitive sort of element of this technology. Money, identity. We talk about these things that are incredibly close to our value system and our sense of who we are and what we're doing and why we're doing it, and so you can encode money and identity right on this technology. So that's sort of a very high level overview. When you talk about using this tech today, say without Near, it's not so easy to reason about, actually. There's sort of these obscure account names and constraints about contract versions and esoteric kind of details of some programming languages that you have to learn. I mean, it all works, and there's $15 billion locked in DeFi today, something like that. So it works, and people are taking it seriously. But coming from a Web 2 background, building web applications, being comfortable in JavaScript, you want to be able to apply that. And so with Near, what you get is this very smooth onboarding with AssemblyScript, which is essentially a subset of TypeScript. So it feels a lot like JavaScript, actually, when you're writing it with types. And Rust. Both of these are languages that live outside of the Web 3 world. You can have a career, with them independent of Near. So that's sort of a professional investment that's worth making. And then when you talk about reasoning about your application, the account naming system is very similar to DNS. This concept of keys and permissions that you can use to sort of control accounts and send money and all that kind of stuff gives you this fine-grained control of what you can do with your contracts. So there's quite a compelling story there that Near might be one of the best, if not the best way for developers coming from a web development background to get introduced to blockchain technology. That's a smooth on-ramp, and you can get moving quickly, really in a matter of hours.
Great. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe Josh, you've seen some things here, but what I'm curious about is, what are people interested in building on Near? Do you have any sense for either people who are already in blockchain or people wanting to come to blockchain? What kind of things are they thinking about when they're looking at building on Near?
For me, is a question for me? Yeah. Sorry, no, I was kind of.
You want to get kicked out again?
Am I going to get kicked out again? Yeah, no, I was just thinking about Sharif's answer to that last question, and that was a very good overall broad spectrum of why Near. But yeah, I definitely think one thing that stands us out is the access key aspect of it, and how you can set kind of permissions and hand out keys to your applications that give you different ways to. We basically have full access or function access, so you can actually very limit how you can interact with smart contracts and how you can interact with the chain based on these special keys that we can assign people as you're using them. But yeah, as far as different, there's a lot of different applications, from DeFi to games. There's a lot of NFT. Seems to be the cool new thing right now. I think it's really cool. Digital collectibles is a very interesting concept, and we have a lot of different partners that are coming to our platform in that space. And yeah, in basically those three spaces, I would say, would be DeFi, games, and also NFTs. It's really interesting seeing how we're taking this technology that everyone's not quite sure where we're going with it, and seeing how we use this new technology in a way that's unique, and there's very we're not really quite sure what the best use cases are for it, but some of these people are coming out with really interesting ways of presenting their ideas on our platform. But to speak to also kind of what you guys were doing with taking all these chains and putting the documents in this way, I really like, because we don't really see ourselves as like one chain to rule them all. I do see things bridging, like we worked on the Rainbow Bridge, bridging with Ethereum. And I do think that all these, blockchains and solutions can work together, and each one kind of has their own niche or way in which they can, be a part of this ecosystem and work together. And I think you guys are kind of providing that by one source of, documentation that's going to kind of help people navigate all these different chains that are available out there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I can add to what Josh has said, it might be worth kind of tying into that. So Josh mentioned the bridge. We have a way for people who are working on Ethereum to transfer artifacts across a bridge to the Near network. So I think right now we're supporting ERC20 tokens coming from Ethereum, and NEP 21 tokens going the other way, sort of the Near equivalent. And that continues to evolve with more stuff moving across the bridge. We also have an EVM that we've implemented as a contract on Near. So you can basically take your Ethereum contract, the bytecode, and deploy it into an account that is running on Near. And that sort of makes for a really smooth transition. And then there are some UX aspects, which I don't know if we touched on exactly, but the most relatable thing for anybody that's ever used a Web3 application is that you're constantly having to approve transactions in MetaMask. And the reason is because you have to sign transactions to approve that something is happening on the network, and someone's got to pay for that. Essentially, it's you. Near has this mechanism. Josh mentioned it a minute ago with these keys, where you can have a key that has an allowance attached to it, and basically give your users something like a freemium on ramp, so that you can pay for their first dollar or two worth of transactions without interrupting the flow of the user experience. So that makes for a very compelling story. And I guess we could go on around this, but UX in general is a big deal inside Near, and Josh and I have been kind of privy to a number of debates internally where people are raging on about like the best way to make this friction free for folks, so that it feels just as natural like any Web 2 application, even though you get all of these benefits of a blockchain application. So.
Yep, that makes sense. Speaking of UX, I think I've seen sometimes Near described as serverless. Is that sort of something you're playing around with in terms of how you're positioning this to folks, smart contracts as serverless, or is that sort of in passing?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you the context that I've heard that in is more analogy than it is technology, right?
Sure.
So when you think about sort of how does a smart contract actually work, it's You can think of the blockchain, I suppose. Let's talk about Ethereum as a single-threaded CPU, right? So there's this machine that runs instructions, one after the other, and the data exhaust of this machine, if it were a car, let's say, gets deposited permanently on chain for all of time, right? As long as the network survives. So with Near, you have actually multiple machines running, right? So it's a multi-threaded machine. And the data exhaust includes the contract, the serialized contract itself. And so when you invoke a method on a contract, what you're doing is, like a serverless function, this is the analogy, sort of bringing it up, bringing it to life, off chain, putting it in the machine, turning the crank to reconcile the function request, and then emitting some data again that gets deposited, and maybe again serializing the state of the contract back on chain. So in that sense, you sort of spin up and you spin down, and the analogy helps if anybody's worked with serverless functions.
That makes sense. I'm curious to talk a little bit about developer tooling. You mentioned some things sort of in this space. You mentioned MetaMask. There's other tools that sort of make it easier for developers to get started or deploy, or you mentioned also iterating on existing smart contracts. Can you just highlight or speak to any of the things that I know you spent a lot of time focused on developer experience and user experience, just some of the things that you think Near really shines with in terms of either interacting with contracts, deploying contracts, iterating on existing contracts?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Josh. No, I was just going to suggest if you want. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say we have create Near app, which is a really easy way to just npx create Near app, your awesome app, and instantly you can deploy a smart contract. You're on blockchain. It automatically creates you an account. You're on testnet, and you're rocking and rolling right away, which is pretty cool and really streamlined and very quick to get started. In addition to that, we have examples at near.dev. If you could post that in the chat for me, Sharif. It's a lot of really cool examples, and it's kind of everything you kind of want. We have NFT, we have a fungible token, we have a guest book that kind of shows you how to integrate our wallet and kind of wire everything up, so you can kind of take a look at that code. And we really think that the live examples are a very good way for you to just kind of take a look at what we've done, see how it works, and use it kind of as a bare bones for you to get started right away on your project. In addition to that, we have Near CLI, which is a command line interface. And it's a really easy tool to kind of interact with our Near API JS, which is a JavaScript library that helps you interact with the Near blockchain via the RPC calls, which I think you guys actually put in your tutorial a little bit. So those are some of the basic tools. I say Explore is definitely one of the coolest things. You can kind of go there and see the blockchain live building. I don't know, it looks really cool. Just see all the blocks building. You can look at any transaction, explore around in there. But yeah, I would say Near Explorer, Near Wallet for creating accounts, Near CLI. Those are some of the big tools that'll immediately get you off the ground. And yeah, Sharif, if you have anything to add to that.
I posted the link to Awesome Near. There's a list there of some interesting projects. I think your point about near.dev, that's a URL. I didn't type it in there as a URL, but it is a good one as well. There's several examples in there. But no, I think you covered it, Josh. That makes perfect sense. The Near up is something we don't talk about because you sort of spin up a node. I think there's this kind of there's this sort of fundamental kind of block that I've seen people hit when they come from web development, where they think they have to sort of control a server or create a server. They forget that it's sort of publicly available and you can just use it, like on testnet, or maybe they don't recognize that. So one of the first things people try and do is they'll try and spin up a server, right? And to do that, you can use this utility we have called Near Up, but you don't actually need to do that. You could do that if you want a local network. That's a reasonable justification. You want to sort of work offline on your own to build your application skunkwork style. You don't want to broadcast publicly your intentions or whatever. That's fine. But if you're just looking to get started right away, Josh called it. It's npx create Near app is the fastest way. Sort of one line generates a project for you, scaffolding and everything, yarn dev, and you're up and running with a project deployed to testnet. So it couldn't be any simpler. And that's sort of again back to that 0 to 10 miles an hour that I think that Learn pathways are really helping with is organizing this information in a way that from curious to confident, you've sort of shrunk that path down to almost nothing, right? Just a matter of minutes or hours. People ask the question and suddenly they're getting productive. So that's the key.
That makes sense. And just to touch back quickly on how you see the open web being interoperable, do you expect apps to have, or dApps to have specific parts of their stack built on different networks, or do you see the same dApp being deployed on multiple networks?
I think from a business perspective, it's going to be about like where's the market, right? So it might be that certain communities gravitate to certain networks. Again, I'm completely out of my comfort zone talking about this, but I suspect it's going to be, the typical sort of who's drawing the crowd, and where do you go to meet that crowd. In terms of whether or not some of these applications will benefit from the network architecture itself, from one protocol over the other, that remains to be seen. But if you speak to Ethereum developers, they'll tell you there's a devil in the details of building production applications on Ethereum. And any one of these networks is going to have the same kind of list, where you've really got to dig into the mental models that are presumed by the owners of the network, the creators of the network, effectively, that how they thought about it, how they intended for the design to work, and so that's going to have an influence on sort of how much time it takes, how much energy it takes to build. And it's sort of one of those things, where the best applications are, people will be, and where the people are, the best applications will come. So I don't know. That sounds like such a wishy-washy answer, but I'm not really sure. Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. And we touched on the Near RPC that you guys have available, especially for the testnet. And as you know, we offer a data hub, which kind of serves a similar purpose, but more for scale and in production tabs. So I'm curious to see how you see those being complementary.
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that Data Hub gives you visibility that we don't currently provide, and I suspect that the rate that you'll be able to innovate with your perspective on several networks will be better for some communities than any individual network is going to be able to provide. You're seeing it from a kind of a different angle, right? So in that sense, I could see the value. The Data Hub gives you this unified view, same tooling, similar affordances across all the networks, so that you don't really have to relearn the interface per network. You can kind of test your idea. And if I had to take a wild guess, I would say that it would become the kind of go-to onboarding strategy for any team that's interested in building on blockchain. Let's start here. Let's figure out what it is we want to do, what network we want to commit to, get moving, maybe get some traction, and then reevaluate, 6 months, a year later, something like that. That to me makes sense. And of course that gives you plenty of opportunity for, capturing that mind share and directing it in the way that you want, towards greater opportunities, more innovation, and reminding us to kind of stay on our toes, right?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah, I think I see it the same way, and definitely the kind of multi-chain approach we have, hopefully will be beneficial for devs onboarding to those protocols, especially in interoperable web. And to get back quickly on this Near pathway, you guys have made a huge commitment to the ecosystem, with $50,000 being committed for incentives to the learners and teachers, essentially. So curious how you decided to allocate this resources, and how you decided to partner with Learn. What was the decision factor on your end?
It was very simple, actually. So the key to adoption is understanding. and exposure, right? And so there is always the benefit to working with individuals, with communities that are interested in learning. But if you can connect with educators, with teachers, with the producers of the lessons, the people who are sort of smoothing out the rough edges in onboarding, there's a massive amount of leverage that you get there. And so when we started talking about this, and what I noticed was essentially two things that made me a champion of Figment and of this project, and frankly of you, Yannick, is the level of hustle with which you are operating at. Yes, of course, take a bow. What was remarkable, the pace and the speed of execution and exposure that you were moving at, I thought was fantastic, and the structure, just from a mental model, I thought was incredibly clear. And so it was a very easy decision internally, actually. It made sense to invest, directly in the learning process, whether it's people who are creating content or people who are consuming that content. And I expect that these rewards will be kind of a small part of people's memory of the experience as they learn so quickly things that have otherwise taken friends of theirs maybe weeks or months to move through, and they're kind of knocking it out in a few hours or a day or something. I mean, I think that's going to be the real gift at the end of this work.
Well, we definitely hope it becomes a gift. And to that sense, I'm curious, what would be for you a home run with Learn? What would be the thing you achieve with Learn that makes you happy about this commitment? And is there a particular type of DApp category that you'd like to see born out of those tutorials, or a number of devs, for example?
I have to I have to kind of be clear here about something. I don't necessarily think that we can imagine what will come of the diversity that's attracted to a structure like this. I could list a few of the things that we're aware of right now, but how many people could spell DeFi 6 or 8 months ago? So without necessarily trying to spell out who we want to attract, I'd say the more the merrier. And in terms of success, the kind of the creation of the thing is the small part. We all know about that. So one of the hardest bits about a sort of an agreement like this, a structure like this, is that we can keep pace with the innovation that's happening in the community and inside the Near collective. As new versions of SDKs are released and the API is updated and maybe some RPC endpoints are refactored. So success for me is going to be in retrospect, 6 months from now, where we look back and say, yeah, we were only out of sync in Figment Learn for less than 30 days in any given time, right? And we were really able to catch these updates and sort of turn those around quickly. And the contributions came not just from heroism, internal to one office or one team, but across the board. Everybody was contributing through GitHub issues and PRs and commentary and so on. So I think that's going to be the real measure of success. More people, more minds paying attention to this work with the diverse set of mental models, and us keeping up so that their journey is successful and friction free.
That's great. Definitely appreciate the partnership on Learn, but one thing I appreciate about Near is that you guys are very serious about sort of developer experience and building this ecosystem. You've also started and run something called the Open Web Collective. I'm curious if there's anything you want to mention about the Open Web Collective and how folks should think about it and maybe apply.
I have some links here from the brain behind Open Web Collective. You can apply here, and I think it would be best for me to kind of just read his response. So the Open Web Collective is running 2 separate programs going into 2021. There's the incubator that's focusing on experimentation, learning Web3 about the Web3 space in a collaborative way. A big focus on matching people and ideas, matching ideas and talent, basically to execute. That's the incubator, and then the accelerator for teams that are committed to Near, to enable communities, and we're calling them guilds at the moment. So if you hear us talk about that on Discord and so on, that's what we mean by essentially a community of people with shared interest. To bring various types of value, to startups and the value that they need around their launches and adoption phases. For example, helping with design, token economics, structuring crypto deals, building communities, optimizing marketing channels, etc. So it's really the incubator and the accelerator. That's what OWC is. And there's a link you can apply there. Everyone's welcome.
Great. The thing I was thinking of is there's sort of a natural progression of you get started and learn and sort of step into the Open Web Collective with as you flesh out your idea and make it more, and from maybe turn it into more of a product or a business. Yep. Okay.
That makes perfect sense.
Yep. Cool. So I have a very tactical question. It was sourced from the audience. It was from a developer, and the question is, what is the number one pain point that people run into? Where do they stub their toe when they're getting started? I think this person wants to avoid it. So is there any common issues or sort of mistakes that you see people run into that we might be able to help them avoid?
Josh, you want to take that, or do you want me to give it a shot?
Yeah, go. Yeah, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, look, it's not unusual to find optionality sometimes getting in the way, right? So sometimes there's too many ways to do something, and so that's why we are trying to kind of direct people to these singular paths. I think Figment Learn, the 5-step pathway that's currently available, is a fantastic entry point. And as Josh mentioned today, create Near app, if you want to get a scaffolded app up and running locally, is another fantastic way to get started. The reality is that that when you're working with systems like this, it takes a little bit of time to think in the way that you're expected to think. Right, that's basically what you struggle with, and then suddenly you're an expert. You know what to ignore, and you can focus on the details, the right details. So that is always a challenge, and I think you'll notice on a Discord server, a lot of people are asking some of the same questions about kind of orientation. You find people kind of false starts, right? I mentioned earlier, they'll say, well, I want to set up a node. How do I do that? And the sometimes people respond with, well, here's how you do it. And then they come back a week later, they're like, okay, now what? Actually, the first question should be, what are you actually trying to do? What are you interested in doing? Are you interested in validating? Do you want to develop? Do you want to integrate? Is there something else that you have in mind? And so the optionality, I think, is the simple answer to that. Sometimes there's just too many things that you can do in a space like this. And so you really have to kind of focus and pick something. And again, back to it, that's why I'm really enamored with this approach that you've taken with the Learn pathways.
Josh, how do you see it? Do you see it similar or different? What do you see sort of common pitfalls when people are getting started?
Yeah, no, that was a great response, Sharif. I think it just kind of execution flow, working with promises and callbacks, how to do things like making a cross-contract call, see the result of that, continue on to the next, the next iteration or execution of that. Just kind of the workflow. I definitely think we could. We're working on that and helping people learn better or learn the way in which you should do workflow. And it's been really cool doing these contract reviews that Sharif and I and a group of us at the DevX team have doing with one of our core developers, Eugene, going over Rust contracts and kind of showing how things are built and how smart contracts are created, and kind of getting more into the inner heads of how we develop things and presenting that to everyone else. So just a workflow, I think, is something that we're trying to work on.
Okay, and then sort of building on this, staying on the topic of developers, one question we get asked often is, do I have to recreate the world from scratch? Are there existing modules, contracts, things I can import? It's one of the things people love about Python. You can import anything, it seems like. Do you imagine that some systems will be built up for Near for either reusable code or modules or libraries where people will go to sort of kickstart their building?
We mentioned. Go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just going to say, I was going to talk more about develop or near.dev as far as some examples that you can kind of get started with. And, yeah, it's an interesting point to maybe take some of those stuff and start making libraries out of certain, existing frameworks that we have in there. But yeah, no, definitely. We have NEPs that are near enhancement proposals in our core contracts that we're looking to develop, and always open to community input and what they would like to see.
Okay, and if folks want to get involved in that the NEP process, where should they head? Is there a forum you talk about the ideas? Is there official governance? How does that briefly? How does that flow work?
If you want to take that.
Yeah, I was just going to grab the URL actually. We have a GitHub repo where we cover these topics, and I think I can share that here, so you can actually lean into that with us. We have several members of the community who are commenting on this. And submitting proposals. So I just posted 2 links actually in the chat. The first one was in support of what Josh was saying a minute ago about the contract review, and that's that's a series today of 4 videos, 30 to 60 minutes each that go pretty deep. So for anybody that wants sort of after you've completed the Learn pathway and you want to dig in maybe with some Rust contract design, some of our core contracts, some of the more advanced concepts, this would be a good follow-on series for that, but probably not before. And then for NEPs, I posted a link there. And then this is kind of the near dev that Josh mentioned. I posted it. It wasn't a link before. Now it's a link. Maybe that'll be a little bit easier to recognize this way. And so that's where we have a set of a dozen or so example applications that you can just open GitHub and clone the repo, run it locally, or actually you can open it in Gitpod. It's basically Visual Studio Code online in a browser, so you don't need to install anything.
Great. Josh, you mentioned earlier some of the things in terms of like workflow. I was thinking about, what do developers have to look forward to? What sort of enhancements? What are you excited about? Either potential features, things that are being worked on from a developer experience perspective. What's coming in the future? Are we going to stay focused on Rust and assembly script? We're going to look at different VMs, different languages. When you look to the future, what do you see coming down the pipe?
Yeah, definitely. Rust and assembly script is kind of our primary focus. We are working heavily on the EVM right now. Like a big chunk of our core team is working on the bridge and making it a very seamless interaction and a very user-friendly. So we want to make sure that it's rock solid, and definitely putting a lot of resources into that. I am a fan of assembly script a lot, just because it brings people from 2.0 to 3.0 very easily. It's very similar to JavaScript, TypeScript, if you're familiar with that, and creating contracts just to kind of get started. It's not as mature of a language as Rust is, but I would like to see some more energy put into assembly script to make it a little bit more robust, and I'd like to get more community members kind of rallied around that and supportive of that, just because it makes it a lot easier to kind of come over and create a smart contract without having to the steep learning curve that Rust can kind of be. Although Rust is an amazing language, very robust, really cool, very intimidating at first, but I've been messing around with it. I'm a Rust noob right now, so I'm trying to figure it out. But yeah, no, it's definitely. I see us kind of hanging out in Rust and assembly script for sure, but I would like to see a little bit more assembly script support.
We'll have a pathway for that.
Awesome.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
great.
It's time for my favorite question, which is the magic wand question. If you had a magic wand and you could improve, add, create anything in Near, what would that be? Open-ended question, can be anything. Take it however direction you want. But you got a magic wand, you can have something launched next week. What is it?
That's a tough one. That's, I would say the graph. It'd be really cool to get the graph on Near. I think, I think a lot of Ethereum developers would love that. And if I could wave a magic wand and have that be done tomorrow, that would probably be the one thing I would choose.
Wonderful. How about you, Sharif?
What do you want?
I want teachers. I'd say if I had a magic wand and it's magic, let's go for like 1,000 teachers tomorrow. Maybe like your favorite teacher from high school. Doesn't have to be a math teacher or anything like that. It could be like a drama teacher because they understand the learning process fundamentally. Get them, magic them into, kind of excitement about this new technology, this Web3 story that we're all talking about, not just Near, but all of it, and get them out there and talking about, the potential of this thing. I think it would be amazing.
Yeah, I would definitely
Yeah.
echo that. It seems that, yeah, the more awareness we have around this technology, I am relatively new to the space and didn't know much about it other than, coins or whatever. But when I realized, oh, wow, there's way more to this space than meets the eye, and it really starts to rapidly become very compelling and interesting and really important. And I just think, yeah, an overall awareness about the space would be rad.
Love both those answers. Yannick, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up here?
Yeah, maybe I'll just share the Near pathway link in the chat.
Oh, I got to leave then. Oh, I thought you were going to do that.
Once per day.
Yeah. Good. So there's the link
This
to
is great.
that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Appreciate your time, Sharif. Appreciate your time, Josh. Sorry we had to banish you temporarily, but glad you decided to join us.
Worries.
Come back.
No worries.
I'm super excited to go and check out some of those links you guys shared. Super excited to try my first Create Near app. I've done it for React before. I'm excited to see what the experience is like for Near. Hopefully it's a similar workflow. So yeah, like I said, I went through the Figment Learn tutorial. I feel like I'm ready to take the next step, and so I got some next ones here. So thanks for all your time. I learned a lot, and look forward to seeing what people build next.
Awesome.
Same here.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
See you guys. Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.